That's the wind of time. That's the wind of history. That's the wind blowing through your ancestors' bones, begging you to do the right thing.
Sir, can you please state your name for the audio record?
That
Sir?
Matt Baker is calling upon from Ocean Beach. The wind that is blowing through the black people, through the white people, through the Chinese people, through the Mexican Americans, to the people that built this building with their bare hands to raise up this nation. They are begging you, and they are blowing through your veins, and they should be putting a tingle up the spine of your back, and they should be begging you to do the right thing. You're about to open a pit of hell. You do not get a vaccine passport put on us. You know, as the population who's in control, you know that the people who are the politicians, once you get a power, you will never relinquish it. Do you think that the 4 feet of marble that holds you above high in this chamber will help you from the fate of humanity which you are unleashing? No! It won't! Your children and your children's children will be subjugated! They will be asked, how many vaccines have you had? Have you been a good little Nazi? Hail Fauci! Hail Fauci! Hail Fauci! Hail Fauci! There has been a lot of talk about the Nuremberg Code. Well, I brought you a copy. You are all in violation of Section 1. Yes, you, Dr. Wooten. You are in violation of the Nuremberg Code, which is international law, and the definition is...
Thank you, sir. Your time has expired.
The definition, we shall not be coerced. All of this is coercion. The vaccine passport is coercion, and the penalty for violating the Nuremberg Code is...
violating the orientation of the meeting. Please take a seat. Please take a seat.
Similar scenes in several American groups outside the CNN Center in Atlanta. The tense moments you saw protests erupting in Minneapolis tonight. Businesses set up in New York. This police car in flames. Officer Derek Chauvin digging away at a Confederate monument, setting some of the statues on fire. Watch how quickly the encounter escalated.
They're marching eastbound.
Authorities clashing with protests of cocktail at the officer. This video showing what appears to be
since its very beginning, but now with 1 million deaths nationwide.
The DEA is cracking down on the reason to take it so quick. Most of them, the fake with the real fix.
But she was greeted with honest military papers and brings her down. Texas smuggling 5 illegal immigrants.
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow. It's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years, actually it's overfulfilled, because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his balls, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization.
The idea of privacy is gone. I think you have to adjust to the fact that somebody somewhere may be watching what you're doing, and it may not be the government. It may be General Motors. It may be General Telephone and Telegraph. It may be the drugstore on the corner.
Let me put it this way. There is in the United States all the technology, from drones to computers to surveillance to day-to-day camera surveillance all over the country. There is a structure and apparatus for a police state. The United States is not a police state. That is clear. We are not that. There I draw the line. But we can be. And we can be with a flip of a switch.
It's a bigger story than the NSA story. Is really corporate surveillance of critics or corporate surveillance of rivals within their own corporations. In other words, executives surveilling rival executives.
These companies are looking for the Edward Snowdens in their own world.
Yes.
I'm incredibly disappointed. Truthfully, I had become disappointed over the last couple of years. I strongly had suspected this, like many others, that this was happening. But what I had not realized is that actually now we've created a situation where all commerce is unsafe, all communications are unsafe. You know, the most things that we had expected to be actually have some level of protection completely eviscerated.
It's not only a violation of freedom of the press, it's a violation of the public's right to know. Information is the oxygen of a democracy. It's not just about participating in democratic processes. It's about being informed. That's what makes democracy meaningful. And when we don't have that information, when a very powerful entity, the government, has the information and the people don't, that is not a very healthy sign.
Said he would do it all again, despite his notoriety and the charges against him.
And I want to make it very clear that I did not do this to be safe. I did this to do what was right. And I'm not going to stop my work in the public interest just to benefit myself.
They're damaging here in the United States because people obviously know what the government is doing. But the damage done internationally is spectacular. Not only did they get a lot of governments really upset with them, that they can patch over, but masses of people throughout the world know that the United States government is surveilling them. And this is a major, major problem for them.
For those in the know, the joke was always that NSA stood for no such agency. For those on the inside, the joke was that NSA stood for never say anything.
The NSA is trying to convince the public that it's not dangerous, but at the same time, it's become obsessed with dangers within, a so-called insider compromise that is now consuming their attention.
You know, I mean, I look at Peter King's condemnation as an enormous badge of honor.
Why shouldn't you, Mr. Greenwald, be charged with a crime? The scandal that arose in Washington before our stories began was about the fact that the Obama administration is trying to criminalize investigative journalism by going through the emails and phone records of AP reporters, accusing a Fox News journalist of the theory that you just embraced, being a co-conspirator with felonies for working with sources. If you want to embrace that theory, it means that every investigative journalist in the United States who works with their sources, who receives classified information, is a criminal. And it's precisely those theories and precisely that climate that has become so menacing in the United States. It's why the New Yorker's Jane Mayer said investigative reporting has come to a standstill.
What do you people like David Gregory that are asking if Glenn Greenwald should be prosecuted?
It's outrageous. I don't know how he can call himself a journalist and talk like that. I mean, look, this is the job. I mean, the job is we're supposed to report the truth. If whistleblowers come forward, we're supposed to take the risk along with those whistleblowers. And society long ago decided that we're supposed to have protections when we do this.
This is what journalism is about, shining a light on what the most powerful people in the country are doing to them in the dark. So we're going to continue to do that no matter what David Gregory and his friends say.
The NSA could not have access to as high a volume of emails and communications without the full cooperation of telecom companies and internet providers. This relationship has blossomed into a surveillance industrial complex with a flow of personnel back and forth between the NSA and its contractors. Snowden had been an NSA employee who left to work for a company called Booz Allen Hamilton, run in part by a former NSA director. Private companies like these were given access to the NSA's top secrets. This also led to an expansion of spying, even as government studies found that the FBI and CIA screwed up by not applying the intelligence they had but couldn't process to stopping 9/11.
So immediately after 9/11, it was somewhat shocking to me that there was a general feeling that was being expressed that the rules didn't matter anymore, that the FBI had been unleashed. And we were now allowed to investigate who we want and not worry about the legal restraints. And it concerned me greatly because I knew from the history of the FBI that would lead the FBI into a dangerous area that was going to impact the civil liberties of innocent people and not improve security, in fact, even harm security. And I think that's essentially what's happened.
He says he joined because he believed in the mission.
The ethos of intelligence work that attracted me was symbolized by the scriptural quote on the foyer of the CIA's new building. It was new in 1963 when I came on under John Kennedy, and it said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." Okay, and I said, looked at that, and I remembered the constant dictum of my Irish grandmother: be truthful and honest, and then you won't give a damn what anyone says about you. Okay. And so I looked at it and I said, Grandma, if that's true, no pun intended, it's going to be a good place to work.
Of them to know the NSA's work well.
NSA did play a role. We learned things about the Soviet Union we never would have known before. It was done with judiciousness, and above all, it was done with respect to what they call the First Commandment out there at Fort Meade, NSA. Thou shalt not collect information, eavesdrop on Americans without a court warrant. That was the rule. That was the First Commandment. When Cheney came in, he called General Hayden, who was head of NSA at the time, he said, General Hayden, I know about that First Commandment at NSA. I know about that. Forget about it. Forget about it. And that was before 9/11.
So the decision for the NSA to begin collecting information on everyone and everything started with an order from above.
Oh, sure. It was Dick Cheney and George Bush. The other thing, of course, that needs to be said is that the technology allowed that for the first time. And so when you had the sort of the rubric here, collect everything, which clearly is their motto now, collect everything. And then they say, well, what people say, what about the problem with the haystack, finding a needle in a haystack? Well, the answer to that, they say, is you got to make sure you had the whole haystack.
Is there a danger of valuable information getting lost because so much is collected? I mean, this is what they said after 9/11. They had information about these hijackers, but nothing was done because there was so much information they couldn't figure out who to go after.
And the Boston bombers and the underwear bombers and the shoe bombers, all these things, because they say you got to look for a needle in the haystack. Well, part of my job in that world was to make sure to limit the size of the haystack. That way you don't have as much hay to go through to look for the needle. And what they're doing is just dumping on more hay. You don't have a haystack anymore. You have a mountain of hay to go through.
Documents leaked by Edward Snowden show that the NSA may have been spying on Chancellor Angela Merkel. An old mobile phone number she used is listed in those documents. Germany, not happy.
Soon, thanks to the Snowden disclosures and media investigations, we found out that the NSA was collecting intel on 122 foreign leaders, even U.S. allies like the Chancellor of Germany and the President of Brazil. 35 leaders had their calls monitored.
For Germany, it is unacceptable that the mobile phone of our federal chancellor may have been subject to surveillance activities by our American partners. For us, spying on close friends and partners is totally unacceptable.
The NSA speaks of its work in neutral and non-threatening language, using terms like collection, telephony metadata. What does that mean? Just to summarize, what is NSA? NSA is the largest, most costly, and most technologically sophisticated spy organization the world has ever known. It filters millions of phone calls and emails an hour. It has computers programmed to watch for hundreds of thousands of names. Its computers cost tens of millions and carry strange names like Black Widow. They run at special speeds most of us have never heard of, hundreds of teraflops that can lead to hundreds of trillions of operations per second. NSA headquarters is 4 times bigger than the U.S. Capitol.
I love the place. I went into the military and the Air Force when Ronald Reagan was president. I was full throttle. We were fighting the Cold War against the evil Soviet Union, and I was a full believer. I mean, I was gung ho, and I'd be the guy that would get in early and stay late, and I wanted to do my job, and I loved the place.
Russ Tice typified the NSA mentality. A space engineer, he believed in their clandestine mission and was totally dedicated. He worked in super-secret so-called black world programs until he discovered that the satellites were not just spying on America's enemies.
In one of these programs, I found out that we were using satellite technology to spy on American citizens.
At issue today is the case of James Risen, a Times reporter who exposed warrantless wiretapping.
So after we had reported on the story and nailed it down, we went to the government for comment. In fact, I went to Michael Hayden, who was then the director of the NSA, and got him on the phone and told him what we were writing. And before he realized what he was doing, he had given me an on-the-record comment. And then, very quickly after that, he and the Bush administration started putting pressure on my editors, demanding that we not run the story.
Their concerns to the agency's attention, but got nowhere. There's been a lot of buzz from some pundits on television saying, well, Snowden should have gone inside and shared his concerns instead of going to the public with these secret documents.
Those avenues don't exist. That chain of command, the DOD IG, NSA's IG was totally in bed with the security office in the front office at Fort Meade at NSA. That's why I didn't even go to them. Matter of fact, back then I was friends with the deputy director of NSA. And I went to him, and he kind of acted like he didn't know what was going on when I talked to him very quietly in private. So I went to the DOD IG. I got nowhere. I went to the Merit System Protection Board only because I was a military veteran. If I wasn't a military veteran, they would have blown me off for that, because the intelligence service is exempt from the laws, from the Whistleblower Protection Act. They're exempt, and that's something you don't hear from these pundits when they're talking. They don't even bring that up. I don't even know if they know it themselves, but the Whistleblower Protection Act does not protect someone in the intelligence community.
There are real threats to our way of life.
While government spying is what's being debated now, private spying is also threatening.
There are private companies gathering information about the political and protest activities of Americans on the streets of American neighborhoods across the country, and there's virtually no regulation of that activity.
There's also a private surveillance industry, isn't there?
Exactly.
I mean, with their own technologies and, you know, and in many cases you have international players like Israeli companies that are very active.
Right, and you have an infrastructure built for it. So after 9/11, the U.S. government helped fund the creation of what are called state and local intelligence fusion centers. And these fusion centers incorporate state and local law enforcement with federal law enforcement, often other state and local government entities like fire and emergency response, sometimes even utilities, private companies, and the military, all together collecting information that's collected by the local police in your neighborhood as a way to funnel it up to the intelligence community. And then they have programs like what they call the Suspicious Activity Reporting Program, which sounds fine if something's suspicious, but they define what's suspicious, and they say things like videotaping, photography, note-taking, drawing diagrams, in one case, in one program, espousing extreme views.
About the fact that they do content.
What right do we have as a country to engage in mass surveillance of other nation states? We don't. Remember, the sovereign rights that are granted all human beings extends beyond just the fact that you're an American citizen. That's all human beings. There is this American exceptionalism. Somehow we're immune from history. I don't think so. All empires have ended up in the dustbin of history. But see, all empires, when they realize that they, or subconsciously realize they can end up in the dustbins of history, tend to project. They tend to compensate. And guess what they do? They increasingly militarize themselves. And that's precisely what is happening in this country.
Limits of government and beyond the borders of countries.
It's not a left-wing issue. It's not a right-wing issue per se. It goes on everywhere in this world. People want to know about what they don't know about.
And spy agencies play to that.
Yes.
The issues at this conference on the rights of the press also deal with another right, the right of the public to be informed about what governments do in their name. That's the focus of Amy Goodman's concern. Goodman is an anchor of a popular independent daily newscast called Democracy Now!
Information is the oxygen of a democracy. It's not just about participating in democratic processes. It's about being informed. That's what makes democracy meaningful. And when we don't have that information, when a very powerful entity, the government, has the information and the people don't, that is not a very healthy sign. It does not bode well for democracy.
Goodman is a strong believer in the Freedom of Information Act that guarantees access to government information when the act is respected. She cites one current example of the government insisting on keeping secret something that happened 60 years ago. The issue is the U.S. role, if any, in the arrest of South Africa's late leader Nelson Mandela in 1962. Ryan Shapiro, an MIT graduate student, is now suing for the information after the government turned down his request.
Ryan Shapiro, the graduate student at MIT, has sued for more information under the Freedom of Information Act than anyone in U.S. history. And one of the issues he cares deeply about is what happened to Nelson Mandela? How was it that he was picked up in the early 60s? Was it just the South African government? Or
media conferences decrying the problem.
You know, I think nothing will come out of events like this, honestly, to answer your question. You know, the final panel was entitled, "Where do we go from here?" but actually there was very, very little of anyone addressing where we go from here. We're at a state here in the United States right now where the press is under attack by the Obama administration, a greater attack than any previous administration. In fact, than all previous administrations rolled together. And so what the question is, where does the media go from here, faced with this attack, faced with the threat of further imprisonment on the part of Times reporters like Jim Risen? The mainstream media themselves are under attack. And I think that one thing I'm hoping you're going to see is a greater unity among the media.
NSA whistleblowers like Russ Tice say that the NSA at first labeled him paranoid to discredit him with the press.
Paranoid is right. They used paranoid. And they did that on purpose, I think, because they realized that if I ever did go to the press, that's exactly what they would say to the press. Because remember, back then, there aren't any... I'm the original NSA, whistleblower with this sort of thing. This is, 2004, 2005 time frame. So, when I finally did come out, that's exactly what they did. They said, you're talking to a crazy guy. Do you want your source to be the crazy guy?
So in other words, even though you had information and speculation that was informed, they basically attempted to discredit you.
Well, of course, yes.
By Ed Snowden, now living in exile in Russia, was heard.
Do you think it's right that the NSA is collecting more information about Americans in America than it is about Russians in Russia? Because that's what our systems do. We watch our own people more closely than we watch any other population in the world. Despite the protections, they are policy-based. The technical systems ingest and collect everyone in this room's communication. When you pick up the phone, when you make a call, when you make a purchase, when you buy a book, all of that is collected, and I could see it at my desk crossing my screen.
Customers and the government. It works on many levels. First, the intelligence agency works with thousands of businesses who offer services and provide contractors. Some of the big ones are on an NSA advisory panel, and others are deeply complicit with its global spying and surveillance mission. At the same time that many are criticizing government spying, customers are pressuring their phone and internet companies, accusing them of violating their privacy. Here's one case documented in this chart shown in a lawsuit proving that AT&T set up a special room to intercept calls the government wanted to spy on. All of this collusion upsets the CEO of another tech company, Roy Singham of ThoughtWorks.
The sad part about this is it's really something that has undermined commerce, it's undermined privacy, it's undermined security. It is so hypocritical what these companies and governments have done to something that could have been so revolutionary, so important to human race, this globalization of an internet economy. And it's been destroyed, quite frankly, by this collaboration.
The NSA is proud of its partnerships with many companies, as these documents released by Edward Snowden makes clear. The dying of data envy. At the same time, initially at least, most of the big companies would not discuss their involvement or deny it. Larry Page of Google said, press reports that suggest that Google is providing open-ended access to our users' data are false, period. Facebook's chief security officer Joe Sullivan said, we do not provide any government organization with direct access to Facebook's servers. Later, Mashable reported Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, and other tech giants knew of the existence of the secret NSA surveillance program, PRISM. NSA's general counsel says tech companies were aware of PRISM, they just didn't know it was called that. Al Jazeera published emails showing a close personal relationship between Google execs and NSA.
Private sector and the Pentagon, when it comes to the American national security state, they really are essentially one.
Here's just one list of NSA private contractors.
And this goes back before 9/11. That NSA was increasingly in the internet age was increasingly going out to the defense, military industrial defense intelligence complex, and granting very, very large contract vehicles in the billions and billions of dollars to quote unquote solve the big data problem, to solve the intelligence problem of the digital age.
Silicon Valley is escalating pressure on President Barack Obama to curb the U.S. government surveillance programs that vacuum personal information off the internet and threaten the technology industry's financial livelihood. A coalition that includes Google, Apple, Yahoo, Facebook, and Microsoft lashed out in an open letter printed Monday in major newspapers. The crusade united 8 companies that often compete fiercely against each other, but now find themselves banding together to limit the potential damage from revelations about the National Security Agency's snooping on web surfers.
As exposés of the corporate role mounted, foreign companies no longer wanted to do business in America.
There are reports rolling in saying that U.S. businesses are feeling fallout overseas from the NSA spying revelations. You normally wouldn't make the connection, but other countries are actually thinking twice now about buying goods that are made by U.S. companies.
Even Julian Assange of WikiLeaks commented on how American companies were being hurt.
You know, I've been involved in the tech industry for a long time. I know my friends in the US are really hurting as a result of of what has happened in the NSA. As far as the outside world is concerned, the United States has become an archipelago of coercion, where any person you were dealing with in business at Google or Facebook or Yahoo or at a telecommunications company might have become secretly an agent of the National Security Agency because they're ordered to do so by the FISA court, and they're forced to keep that secret or through the mechanism of national security letters.
And just to remind you, the key witness against Assange, he recanted his whole story. A key witness in the Department of Justice case against Julian Assange has admitted that his entire testimony is false, a revelation that could be the death knell for the U.S. attempts to prosecute him. This guy, often known as the Siggy the Hacker, made the confession to Icelandic outlet Stundin last weekend. The article details how this guy, a convicted felon, pedophile, and diagnosed socio-frickin' used his position to steal money from WikiLeaks and received immunity from prosecution from the FBI in a quid pro quo. So this guy, this pedophile, convicted felon, sociopath, this is the guy they're using to impugn Julian Assange's character. Mm-hmm. Also this, Manafort held secret talks with Assange in Ecuadorian embassy, sources say. That was complete bullshit and made up. The Young Turks reported this as if it was true. That video's still up on the Young Turks website. This lie about Julian Assange. Rising Serpent tweets out, so let me see if I understand this correctly. While Twitter was shutting down countless accounts under the excuse of preventing Russian propaganda, the Pentagon and Twitter were literally fronting multiple sock puppet accounts on Twitter to spread propaganda all over the world. Yes, it's like I've always said, the biggest purveyors of misinformation is first the government, then the corporate media. What do you think Twitter is? It's corporate media.
Well, it's not bad when we do it.
Right? The biggest the spreaders of misinformation and disinformation and lies, the government and corporate media.
We need a unipolar misinformation world.
And so that's why it's hilarious to think that there's going to be some corporate media, by the way, an opaque corporate media. Nobody knows what they're doing, who they are, in the dark of night, censoring. Lee Fang tweeted these out. So I guess he had the access from Musk on this. He says how Twitter quietly aided the Pentagon's covert online PSYOP campaign. So now you got Twitter doing PSYOPs for the military, but I can't make a joke about the election.
And by the way, they were real noticeable PSYOPs. They weren't like, it wasn't like, oh, I wonder.
Despite promises to shut down covert state-run propaganda networks, Twitter docs show that the social media giant directly assisted the United States military influence operation. So Twitter themselves was out there helping spread misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, and stuff to influence elections. Twitter has claimed for years that they make concerted efforts to detect and thwart government-backed platform manipulation. Turns out they don't. Turns out they work with the government to manipulate the platform. Here is Twitter testifying to Congress about its pledge to rapidly identify and shut down all state-backed covert information operations and deceptive propaganda. But they lied. But behind the scenes, Twitter gave approval and special protection to the United States military online psychological influence ops. Despite knowledge that Pentagon propaganda accounts use covert identities, Twitter did not suspend many for around 2 years. And some of them are still active.
Wow, who are those brave men and women telling me that I've lost it?
Yep.
Used to have
That's what they do. They swing by and go, boy, now you've really lost it. That's what those are.
Did you have basic training to come up with that?
So if I tell the truth about Ukraine or Russia or Syria or whatever, there'll be some government bots that come by my Twitter feed and say, boy, you've really lost it.
Well, I hope they're at least made in America bots and not in Ukraine.
After government propaganda counts, but in reality, they're propping them up. They're working with them. There is no difference between the government and Twitter when it comes to these things. And as the People's Party tweeted out, the Twitter files prove that the United States military and the intelligence agencies are manipulating social media and running psychological operations on Americans.
Hey, the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act.
That's
coming
right.
Home.
So they got rid of that law that said that the government can't propagandize against their own people, I mean the Americans. Now they do.
Oh, by the way, even when it was against the law, they also were doing that.
Did it anyway.
They just had to have another department within the department.
So I hope everybody gets it, that you can't trust Twitter, you can't trust Facebook, Instagram, you can't trust corporate America, MSNBC, CNN, Fox, you can't trust the Washington Post and New York Times, and you certainly can't trust Twitter or politicians. Between January 2020 and November 2022, there were over 150 emails the FBI and former Twitter trust and safety chief, Yoel Roth, between them. We've showed you Yoel Roth before. Now he's afraid for his life. Some are mundane, like San Francisco agent Elvis Chan wishing Roth a Happy New Year, along with a reminder to attend one quarterly call next week. Others are requests for information into Twitter users related to active investigations. So that's more of their friendly relationship with the FBI and the higher-ups at Twitter. But a surprisingly high number of requests by the FBI for Twitter to take action on election misinformation, even involving joke tweets from low follower accounts. This is kind of mind-blowing, that part. The FBI social media, I'll show you, we're going to show you it. The FBI social media focused task force, known as FTIF, or fuckheads, created in the wake of 2016 elections, swelled to 80. So they had 80 agents monitoring Twitter for jokes they didn't like. You think I'm kidding? That 80 FBI agents, they're getting dental so they can peruse fucking Twitter all day. That's what they're doing with your tax dollars.
Well, do you think they have to show like numbers of, because the low follower count, the ones I saw them, they censor them.
They have a quota? Yeah.
But much less valuable than
much
a cop
less
doing
valuable.
that, yeah.
Federal intelligence and law enforcement reach into Twitter included the Department of Homeland Security, which partnered with security contractors and think tanks to pressure Twitter to moderate content. It's no secret that government analyzes bulk data for all sorts of purposes, everything from tracking terror suspects to making economic forecasts. The Twitter files show something new. Agencies like the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security regularly sending social media content to Twitter through multiple entry points pre-flagged for moderation. So all that means is the FBI was on the regular sending shit to Twitter and saying, take this down, censor this. And who did the work? The FBI did the work, and we're giving you an order. Go ahead.
It's not censorship if it's not the government. It was the government. It's been the government the whole time.
It's been the government. What stands out is the sheer quantity of reports from the government. Some are aggregated from public hotlines. So here it says, Election Day protocol for FBI headquarters is to stand up a national election command post, which provides a centralized location for assessing election-related threats. Status reports and complaints are tracked. Have a tip, send it in. So what stands out is the sheer quantity of reports from the government. Some are aggregated from public hotlines. So they would just you could call them, you could call the FBI's hotline, and the FBI would call Twitter and say, fucking take down this thing.
See something, censor something.
In a letter to former Deputy General Counsel and former top FBI lawyer Jim Baker on September 6, 2022, these are recent. Legal executive Stasia Cardil outlines results from her soon-to-be weekly meeting with the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. What in the fuck is going on at Twitter? There were multiple points of entry into Twitter for government flag reports. This letter from Agent Chan to Roth references Teleporter. That's a platform through which Twitter could receive reports from the FBI. Reports also came from different agencies. Here, an employee recommends bouncing content based on evidence from the Department of Homeland Security. State governments also flagged content. Twitter, for instance, received reports via the Partner Support Portal, an outlet created by the Center for Internet Security, a partner organization to the Department of Homeland Security. Why was no action taken? Below, Twitter execs receiving an alert from California officials by way of our Partner Support Portal debate whether to act on a Trump tweet. And that's them debating it. California hired, this is the tweet, California hired a pure Sleepy Joe Democrat firm to count and harvest votes. No way Republicans get a fair shake. Lawyers, get started. GOP leader, California is in big trouble. Vote Trump and watch the greatest comeback of them all. Also, New York and Illinois, go for it. So that's what they're talking about. The EIP is one of a series of government-affiliated think tanks that mass review content. A list that also includes the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensics Research Laboratory and the University of Washington Center for Informed Policy. The takeaway, what most people think of as the deep state, is really a tangled collaboration of state agencies, private contractors, and sometimes state-funded non-governmental organizations. The lines become so blurred as to be meaningless. Interesting, that has to do with Julian.
Let me tell you a secret. I had possession of all the Chelsea Manning information before it came out in the press.
Did you?
Julian, I never said that publicly. Julian Assange had conveyed to me as a backup in case his was, they caught him and they got everything. He could rely on me to find some way to get it out if I felt. So I had all that, and when I say that, I'm saying that by the current standing of the Department of Justice, I am now as indictable as Julian Assange and as everyone who put that information out. The papers, everybody who handled it. Yes, I had copies of it, and I did not give them to an authorized person. So if they want to indict me for that, I will be interested to argue that one in the courts, whether that law is constitutional. The Supreme Court has never held that using the Espionage Act as if it were a British Official Secrets Act, which I would clearly have violated, but if that, using the Espionage Act as if it were an Official Secrets Act, which has never been passed by our Congress, that would be criminal. They've never ruled on that. I'd be happy to take that one to the Supreme Court.
Videos that aren't academic. This post about the Hunter Biden laptop situation shows that Roth not only met weekly with the FBI and the DHS, but with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the DNI. Yor has checked in. Here's what they say. What's new for you since our last check-in? Hacked materials exploded. We blocked the New York Post story. Then we unblocked it, but said the opposite. Then said we unblocked it. And Now we're in a messy situation where our policy is in shambles. Comms is angry. Reporters think we're idiots. And we're refactoring an exceedingly complex policy 18 days out from the election. In short, FML weekly sync with FBI, DHS, DNI, election security. The meeting happened about 15 minutes after the aforementioned hacked materials implosion. The government declined to share anything useful when asked. Monthly meetings with the FBI, FITF, briefed on several ongoing investigations.
Wow. So they said to them, hey, why don't you do me a favor and suppress this thing? Hey, can you share why you know this is hacked? No. Wow.
Yeah, so they said, suppress this, censor it. Can you show us why we should censor it? No, we're not gonna. And they did it anyway. Roth's report to FBI, DHS, DNI is almost farcical in its self-flagellating tone.
Yeah.
We blocked the New York Post story, then unblocked it, but said the opposite. Comms is angry. Reporters think we're idiots. In short, FML.
FML.
Which means F my life.
Wow, that's the great kind of writing he used in that thesis that minors should go on Grindr.
So some of Roth's later slacks indicate his weekly confabs with federal law enforcement involve separate meetings. Here he ghosts the FBI and DHS respectively to go first to an Aspen Institute thing, then take a call with Apple.
Or the Aspen Institute, those come up in my feed and it always looks like some garbage.
Yep. Hey there, I have to miss the FBI and DHS meetings today, unfortunately. I saw you're on the invites for both. Can you give me a quick readout if there's anything interesting that comes up? Sure thing, I hope that everything's okay. Yeah, I just have conflicts at both times. An Aspen Institute thing this morning on vaccines that I have to present at. And then a call within Apple to avoid us getting kicked out of the App Store during the DHS one.
So Apple was threatening that before?
I don't know. Those both seem very important indeed. Here, the FBI sends reports about a pair of tweets, the second of which involves former Tippecanoe County, Indiana councilor and Republican named John Basham, claiming between 2% and 25% of ballots by mail are being rejected for errors. Wow.
PolitiFact, okay.
The FBI's second report concerned this tweet by John Basham. And here it is. It says, the Democrats are in complete panic as their massive push for a vote by mail is backfiring on them. Two things are unfolding. An unexpected number of registered Republicans are returning ballots. Between 2 and 25% of ballots by mail are being rejected for errors. The FBI flagged the tweet, then circulated it in the enforcement Slack. Twitter cited PolitiFact to say the first story was proven to be false, then noted the second was already deemed no vio on numerous occasions. What does that mean, no vio?
No violation.
Okay, no vio. Okay. The group then decides to apply a learn how voting is safe and secure label because one commenter says it's totally normal to have 2% error rate. Roth then gives the final go-ahead to the process initiated by the FBI. Here it is. I think we can use the mail-in voting label for this one as is. Examining the entire election enforcement Slack, we didn't see one reference to moderation requests from the Trump campaign, the Trump White House, or Republicans generally. And we looked. They may exist. We weren't told they do. However, they were absent here. In the docs, executives often expand criteria to subjective issues like intent. Yes, a video is authentic, but why was it shown?
Who cares? I don't care if it was hacked. I don't care if it was to harm faith in the election process. I want to just know what the truth is.
Wow. Is it authentic? But why was it shown? Orientation. Was a banned tweet shown to condemn or support? Or reception? Did a joke cause confusion?
All things that are none of your goddamn business, you mother.
This reflex will be
none of your goddamn business.
Reception. Did a joke cause confusion?
All things that are none of your goddamn business, you
mother. This reflex will become key in January 6th. In another example, Twitter employees prepare to slap a mail-in voting is safe warning label on a Trump tweet about a postal screw-up in Ohio before realizing the events took place, which meant the tweet was factually accurate, meaning Trump's tweet was factually accurate. Here it is. No, a rigged election. Nearly 50,000 votes received. There it is. Very well done on speed. Trump was being visibly filtered as late as a week before the election. Isn't that influencing the election secretly?
I mean, it's at literally more than anything Russia did on any level.
More than anything Russia did.
Like, I've seen the lame memes Russia sent. They didn't seem to have anything to do with anything.
Here, senior executives didn't appear to have a particular violation, but still worked fast to make sure a fairly anodyne Trump tweet could be replied to, shared, or couldn't be replied to, shared, or liked. Here it is. So here's his tweet. Big problems and discrepancies with mail-in ballots all over the USA. Must have final tote on November 3rd.
Learn how voting by mail is safe and secure. What kind of idiot saw that warning label on there and was like, oh, I'm sure this is there anything more suspicious than
No. This tweet can't be replied to, shared, or liked. There it is.
That's not suspicious.
And here he is. What's the team's recommendation? Thank you. Agree the recommendation. Flagging right now with leadership, given it's the President of the United States. We'll set up a call. Can we use a new doc per pill review? Okay, we'll include that in our playbook after. And there it is.
What does EDI approved mean?
EDI approved. I don't know. Very well done on speed. There it is. Very well done on speed. The group is pleased the Trump tweet is dealt with quickly. Let's inform stakeholders and move forward. Do you still want to do a call? No, you could skip. Blah, blah, blah. Happened to. All right, so there you go. A seemingly innocuous follow-up involved a tweet from actor James Woods, whose ubiquitous presence in argued over Twitter data sets is already a Twitter files in-joke.
Oh, so he said they're suppressing this tweet.
So he says Twitter is suppressing this tweet by the president. Here's a screen grab. After Woods angrily quote-tweeted about Trump's warning label, Twitter staff, in a preview of what ended up happening on January 6th, despaired of a reason for action, but resolved to hit him hard on future violations. Considering, see, there it is. So, yeah, you're fine letting this one lie. Can hit him hard on future violations with firmer basis.
Oh, now we can do the considering the years of Trump's tweets to get one. Now that's on him.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
That's kind of amazing.
It sounds like cops.
Well, he didn't do it this time, but man, we're going to get him next time. This doesn't sound like dispassionate, objective Twitter content. What's the word? I don't know. Censoring.
It sounds like what the government does.
Yes, this sounds like partisan hackery bullshit. This sounds like favoring one political point of view over another.
Well, you want to get your money's worth from all the money
This is what they said fucking Russia did, Kurt. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
This is the shit they thought Russia was doing. And here it is. Our Twitter's doing it at the behest of the FBI.
Yeah, the FBI see it, right? All DHS.
Yes. DHS, the DN.
Thing, like who's president?
Hey, team, can I get your opinion on this? This is an edge case with commentary encouraging voters not to vote by mail. I believe we should label it. I think that I'd not bother with labeling this one. It's still encouraging people to vote, but expressing the concern that mailed ballots might not make it in time, which seems fair this close to the election date. Still encouraging people to turn in their ballots in person or to vote in person. Okay, thank you, Patrick. Okay, thank you, Patrick.
Thanks, Patrick.
That's understandable. Even the hashtag steal our votes, referencing a theory that a combo of Amy Coney Barrett and Trump will steal the election, is approved. So you can say it one way, You can say election rigging, and you can say election stealing, and you can say election hacking. You can say it one way if you're a Democrat. You can say it all day long. But if you're a Republican, you can't say it. And it's still that way. You can say 2016 election was stolen by Russia and was stolen by Trump. You can say it. I'm saying it right now. You can't say the other thing. I can't even pretend to say it.
They would never do that.
I can't even pretend to say. On the Hill showed a video of Trump saying it, a video of the president of the United States saying something about the 2020 election. And they got a strike because they showed the president saying it. You think that's what a news show's supposed to do?
Especially
not on YouTube.
A compromised bullshit outlet like The Hill. That has billionaire backup. Even they.
So that's at a thing called the Democracy Forum. Jeffrey Sachs started to tell the truth about the United States imperialism, and the guy from the New York Times shut him down right away. Want to watch it again without me stopping it? Here we go.
The most violent country in the world in the 19th century, by far, was perhaps the most democratic or second most democratic, and that was Britain. You can be democratic at home and ruthlessly imperial abroad. The most violent country in the world since 1950 has been the United States. It's been by far involved
Jeffrey,
in
stop now. Jeffrey, I'm your moderator, and it's enough.
Okay, I'm done.
Jeffrey, I'm being paid by the oligarchy, and I have been for my whole career, and I plan on going out in style. Now, would you please shut up? We're here to pretend we give a shit about the world and democracy and liberty, okay? If you're not willing to pretend, then shut up. That's what that is, right?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what that is. That guy is Stephen Erlanger, who is the chief diplomatic correspondent for the New York Times. And so it's his job to basically go out every day and write articles portraying the U.S. as this glorious country that rules the world with generosity and spreads democracy and freedom. And so here's Jeffrey Sachs to his face inconveniencing that narrative that he's paid to spread. And so he has that freak out as a result.
Skating over the...
Well, look, he's proven to be exactly right by what's come out since he said that. A member of parliament in Germany says the German government was refusing to share any details about their investigation into the sabotage of Nord Stream because it would jeopardize state secrets. And that was a reference to the fact that it would jeopardize intelligence sharing with other countries. And that's a suggestion that other intelligence services might have been involved in the sabotage of Nord Stream. And Sweden, I think, it was Sweden or one of those governments did their own investigation and wouldn't share it with the other countries because, again, it would compromise state secrets. So all that points to that they don't want to embarrass an intelligence service that was involved in sabotaging Nord Stream 2 because, of course, the idea that Russia would sabotage their own pipeline, their own form of leverage over Europe is just ridiculous. And everybody else had the motive and the open intent to blow up Nord Stream 2. They were saying that for a long time that they would stop it.
Guess what? This is a wild story tweeted out by Greg Price. Last April, the FBI raided the home of an ABC journalist named James Gordon Meek. He was finishing up a book about Biden's withdrawal from Afghanistan, which of course is not going to be flattering. He also has a documentary on Hulu, also not flattering, about our foreign policy and a big cover-up of the death of Marines in Niger. He's been charged with no crime. He's abruptly resigned from his job, and nobody has seen him since. He's an Emmy Award-winning producer. And the FBI raided his home. And nobody has seen him since. This story is legit crazy. The guy was an Emmy Award-winning national security reporter at the top of his profession, and all of a sudden fell off the face of the earth after the FBI raided his home. Source in the story just says he had classified information on his computer. Now, that is when the FBI says he has classified information on his computer, what that means is he has embarrassing, damaging information to the establishment. That's what that means. Not comment further. No, they can't. Meek had been charged with no crime. He's been charged with no crime, but he's disappeared. But independent observers believe the raid is among the first, and quite possibly the first, to be carried out on a journalist so this is Biden administration going after journalists. So they're saying this is possibly for the first time Biden has done this. No, he's doing it with Julian Assange. They're still doing that. So I would say this would be the second. And the Biden administration going after journalism after they said that. So Trump did, because he was rude to Jim Acosta. You mean Trump didn't raid Jim Acosta's apartment and then disappear him? No. I'm sure nothing was up. Here's a picture of that guy. Where is James Gordon Meek? That's him. FBI raids this journalist investigating corruption in the federal government, and not even his neighbors have seen him since April.
Well, that sounds completely normal.
Sounds completely normal.
Oh.
Why do I have a feeling the FBI knows where he is? Reason why on Tuesday Twitter why the rest of the stuff didn't come out right away, because on Tuesday Twitter Deputy General Counsel and former FBI General Counsel, so this FBI guy working over at the goddamn social media, right in it. Just like how they hired the CIA now. They used to have the CIA used to bribe journalists to go say stuff, but now they just bring the guy on from the CIA to say it.
He was part of the Fox in the henhouse division of Twitter.
Yes. So this guy, Jim Baker, who was fired, but among the reasons vetting, so the process for producing the Twitter files involved delivery to two journalists, Barry Weiss and him, via lawyer close to the new management. However, after the initial batch, things became complicated. Over the weekend, while we were both dealt with obstacles and searches, it was Barry Weiss who discovered that the person in charge of releasing these files was frickin' FBI guy. Their general counsel. That was the guy who was in charge of releasing them. What? And he was taking stuff out before he released them. So here, the first batch of files reporters received was marked Spectra Baker emails. Spectra Baker. That's him, general counsel. So this is from the Epic Times.
Warrants? He's the guy that signed off on them?
So you want to know about this guy? So it was in his role that he not only was responsible for reviewing FISA warrants against Trump's 2016 presidential campaign aide Carter Page, which were later found by the Department of Justice Inspector General Michael Horowitz to contain numerous flaws, meaning lies. But he also aided his friend, Clinton 2016 presidential campaign lawyer Michael Sussman, in delivering fabricated data to the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane team that was investigating the Trump campaign. So Crossfire Hurricane was what led to Russiagate. That's when they were spying on the Trump campaign, saying they were working with Russia. It was all made up, and then he had to get fake FISA warrants. And now they're saying that Joe Biden gave the order for Justin Trudeau to use that emergency authorization thing. And so I just want to give a little background to remind you of why the truckers were right. Fauci says just about everybody will get infected with COVID. So it doesn't matter what treatment you take, everybody will get infected with COVID. So that's why the mandates never made us. The reason why you want a mandate is because you think it's going to stop people from getting it and spreading it. According to Fauci, everybody's going to get it. Almost everybody already did. Of Justin Trudeau being deposed or having to give testimony. And in March of 2021, he wanted everybody to be nice to the truckers and thank them. While many of us are working from home, there are others who aren't able to do that, like the truck drivers who are working day and night to make sure our shelves are stocked. So when you can, please thank a trucker. And then he went on to lie about the truckers because they protested his bullshit and his authoritarianism. And he lied. Then those same truckers he was asking you to thank, he then was lying about them and saying they were violent, they were racists.
Nazis. Yeah.
They were what?
He called one of them Nazis, right? With the Nazi flag.
So Nazi flag, right? So all that.
Harped on that.
So now that they're actually doing an investigation into all that garbage, they're finding out the exact opposite is true. Of course, the government was lying. Of course, the president of the premier of Canada, was lying because he's a criminal, just like all of them are. Officials monitoring the Freedom Convoy admitted that there was no violence. All right, we lied about all that. And here's Justin Trudeau.
The federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act to supplement provincial and territorial capacity to address the blockades and occupations.
Now, that is him shutting down protesters. That is him shutting down their access to their own bank accounts. And that's how you crush dissent and protest. And he did it because he's an authoritarian criminal. And he's the opposite of what he pretends to be. He's the authoritarian Nazi criminal, not the truckers. The truckers are actually standing up for freedom, liberty, and anti-authoritarianism, and they were right, and they've been proven right. And why did you have to lie about them? They had to lie about them so they could do this, so they can seize all their money in their bank accounts. That's why they had to lie about them. He said, when a government starts trying to cancel dissent or avoid dissent, it's when it's rapidly losing its moral authority to govern. Justin Trudeau tweeted that out. He tweeted that out. May 2012. He tweeted that out. And then he gets power and he immediately starts to crush dissent. So now, according to Rebel News, they say that President Biden ordered Trudeau to dismantle Canadian Freedom Convoy. Now, I don't say that didn't happen. I'm saying that the evidence isn't quite there yet. But here's what the evidence we do have. Canadian Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland emailed staff on February 10th, stating that the White House was very worried that their northeastern car plants will shut down if Trudeau didn't stop the convoy within 12 hours. So that's what she emailed her staff saying that the White House, meeting Biden, was afraid that they're going to shut down car plants within 12 hours. Brian Dees, Biden's top economic advisor, told Freeland that if the blockades were not dismantled at the border, the United States would lose $2.9 billion in trade. And then immediately, Justin Trudeau did that emergency authorization to screw over the truckers and steal their bank accounts. And here's that Chrystia Freeland being questioned about this. Here we go.
Heard that the CEOs of two major banks contacted you, Canadian banks, I believe. And we also heard that President Biden, who's probably the world's most powerful person, or near that, had a telephone call with the Prime Minister.
Yes, both of those things are true.
And that telephone call, it happened on a Friday, and by the Monday, the Emergencies Act was invoked.
That's true.
Okay.
So now he's going to make a direct correlation to that, and she's going to deny it.
So I put it to you, Minister, that the federal government had to show the USA that they were in control, and that explains why the Emergencies Act was invoked, despite the fact that, for example, the Ambassador Bridge was cleared and open to traffic.
So he's saying, the Ambassador Bridge was cleared and open to traffic. The protesters were working with the police. Why did you guys go ahead and do this anyway? Oh, because Joe Biden called Justin Trudeau on Friday and told him to do it, right? What she says.
No, I wouldn't agree with that characterization.
Oh, no? You wouldn't?
Okay, well, I would put it to you that the pressure the government was under explains why the Emergencies Act was invoked, despite the fact that a deal had been struck with the protesters in Ottawa to reduce the footprint of the protest in that city.
Again, I would disagree with that.
Again, what are you talking about? She would disagree with that. Right, because it implicates you. That's why you would disagree with that. But it's clear that's probably what happened.
Let's see if you would agree with this. I'd put it to you that there was no meaningful consultation with the provinces, not even advance notice of what the First Minister's meeting was about. And that's because the government didn't have time for it. They just had to make a decision about the Emergencies Act because of the tremendous pressure that they were under.
Again, I disagree with a great deal of that characterization.
One last question for you then, Ms. Freeland. I put it to you that given the overwhelming situation that the government was facing explains why they were willing to use extraordinary powers against their own people, despite the fact that no police agency or intelligence agency told them that there were threats to the security of Canada.
Again, I disagree with many of the premises in that question, and I would be happy to elaborate, but it seems that we're out of time.
Oh, shucks. January 6th, turns out the FBI had infiltrators in the crowd like we thought.
Oh, thank God they put a stop to that bloody attack that day.
I mean, we knew they did, but now the establishment is validating it. So now the New York Times is printing it, so now we can say it. So, and you know, the FBI has had as many as 8 MFers, informants inside the far-right Proud Boys in the months surrounding the storming of the Capitol on January 6th. Recent court papers indicate raising questions about how much federal investigators were able to learn from them about the violent mob attack, both before and after it took place. You know, all the other stories I read about the FBI embedding, what they do is they then concoct whatever the crime is that they want the group to do. The FBI concocts that crime.
How much they were able to teach them
That's
about
right.
how to do
Shows them how to do it,
Yeah.
and then entices them to do the
It's not
crime.
entrapment. It's perfectly.
That's right.
They have to just show it's in your nature.
That's right.
That's the legal wording. In
your
nature.
nature. So the FBI has been running around. So
What
now
is the
they're
Proud Boy-
so now they're
yeah.
saying they're just trying to learn. Like they weren't actually the ones helping plan it. Really, I'd be surprised to find out they weren't the ones actually planning it. The informants were well liked. They were always ready to pick up Heineken and blueprints of Schumer's office for the riot.
Couldn't they have done something?
That's the question. Yeah, why would you first? A, why would you do that? And B, why didn't they help? Here we go.
Again, I had to be very careful.
It should be a no.
It should be a
Can you
no.
not
That answer should be a no. We didn't.
It's that easy.
It's that easy.
That simple.
No, we didn't have any people dressed up as Trump supporters stationed inside the Capitol. Why would we do that? Can't answer it.
The American people know we did not have confidential human sources dressed as Trump supporters positioned inside the Capitol.
Gentleman's
on January
time
6th.
has expired. You should not read anything into my decision not to share information
Director Ray,
confidential.
You shouldn't read anything into that.
Oh, I won't.
Okay.
Okay. He looks like an evil Steve Martin.
Yep. And so here's this guy, Ray Epps, who has still not been called as a witness in the January 6th hearings. You want to see why he should be?
Tomorrow, we need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol. What? No!
So they figure out this guy's full of shit right away. The crowd is like, so they suspect him to be working with the FBI, and they start calling him a Fed because it really, really, really looks like he's working for the FBI. And the FBI they didn't put this guy in jail. He hasn't been charged. Nothing.
I mean, he's instigating it really
and
hard.
He's instigating
the way
it.
They don't even want to do it, and they're gasping. What?
Right. That's right. Watch.
Tomorrow, we need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol. What? No! Peacefully. Fed.
So how did it still happen when everybody can spot a Fed? That's what I don't get.
Because I'll be arrested.
Well, let's not say it.
We need to go. I'll say it. All right. We need to go in.
Shut the fuck up, Boomer.
To the Capitol.
Base Fed posting? All right. We need to go into the Capitol. I didn't see that coming. Okay.
The president is done speaking. We are going to the Capitol, where our problems are.
Wow, it's almost like. So a lot of people are saying he's an FBI undercover guy, and he's now directing the crowd to do things, and he's trying to get them through inciting the mob to do the thing, so that they can then say that being a Trumper is now almost illegal. That's what they want to make. If you're a Trumper now, it's almost illegal. That's what Joe Biden's speech was about with the red, and he says his political enemies are enemies of our Constitution. That's what dictators do. That's what fascist dictators do. They say their political enemies are not just political enemies who disagree with them, but that they're an enemy to our state, our constitution, and our democracy, which is what Joe Biden said of Trumpers.
Why is this guy, by the way, I believe the FBI, and I don't think they would ever do something like that. This guy that caused that bloody tragedy that day, he was directly involved in it. Like, he, or nothing like what this
Nothing like this guy said.
It's that direction.
He's
Please spread the word.
All right, okay, but one more thing.
Yeah, so can we go up there? No?
When we go in,
Are we going to get arrested if we
leave
go
this
up there?
here. You don't need to get
Did you
shot.
arrest us all?
Oh, so they.
So there it is. That's Ray Epps and the FBI. Edward Snowden tweeted this out today. The most important video of the year was filmed in 1983. I wonder what this video is. I bet it talks about how the CIA has been and the establishment has been lying and controlling everything. And you're a chump if you think you live in a democracy. Let's see.
You briefed the press, did you not, when you were there?
Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we...
You know, like ivermectin is used for horses. That was half a truth that became a full lie because it's also an award-winning, Nobel Prize-winning, WHO essential human drug. So that's what he's talking about.
Pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. So either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually, the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. And I would say our percentage planning that kind of data was 70 to 80%. The correspondents we targeted were those who had terrific influence, the most respected journalists in Saigon, like Robert Chaplin of the New Yorker magazine, Kai's Beach of the Los Angeles Times from time to time, and also he worked for the Chicago Daily News. Bud Merrick of U.S. News and World Report, Malcolm Brown of the New York Times, even Maynard Parker of Newsweek magazine. We would go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or at the Continental Hotel, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across, which might not be true. One piece of data, for instance, that we managed to plan in the New Yorker magazine had to do with a supposed North Vietnamese effort in 1973 to develop airfields along the border of South Vietnam. The reason we wanted to plant this information was that we were trying to persuade the U.S. Congress that Saigon should continue to get a great deal of aid, and that the North Vietnamese were the chief violators of the ceasefire accord. That was printed in the New Yorker magazine under the byline of Robert Chaplin, as indeed was a great deal of such information which we tried to circulate. If I planted a piece of information with a reporter, I would ordinarily then try to create an environment in which he could not check the information. I would go to the British ambassador and brief him on the disinformation I had just given the reporter. So when the reporter wanted to cross-check what I'd told him with, say, the British ambassador, New Zealand ambassador, or what have you, he would get false confirmation, the same message coming back at him. He'd say, aha, I've got proof that Frank Snepp told me the truth, when in fact, what he'd gotten was simply an echo of what I'd given him in the first place, via the British ambassador or other of our friendly diplomatic contacts. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job.
Well, of course that guy's an idiot. Of course that's their job.
What is their job if not that?
Of course that's their job. So again, the problem is indicting us, and they always have. Right. By the way, Barack Obama got rid of the law that said they couldn't do it overtly. Obama got rid of.
This guy had to go behind the scenes
to do it. So they don't even hide the CIA. Like the CIA used to infiltrate newsrooms, and they would corrupt journalists. Now they just put him on air. The head of the CIA just goes on CNN, just goes on MSNBC, just goes on Fox News, ABC, NBC, CBS. Yeah. The head of the CIA, or the former director of the NSA, or the head of the FBI. And they bring these guys on as if they're experts. Instead of checking them for lying, they're bringing them on to tell us what they consider the truth. Of course they're lying. So everything you're seeing on MSNBC or CNN about a war or about Russiagate or about anything is a lie. And that's what Chomsky proved to us.
Really a reflection of the sophistication of the resistance to occupation in Afghanistan and the sophistication of the Taliban, but rather it is a reflection of the lack of genuine will amongst European and US soldiers. Because the goal is not to completely subjugate Afghanistan. The goal is to use Afghanistan to wash money out of the tax bases of the United States, out of the tax bases of European countries, through Afghanistan and back into the hands of a transnational security elite. That is the goal, i.e. the goal is to have an endless war, not a successful war. So Stop the War Coalition is important because we have to prevent it becoming normal for there to be a constant war. Very soon, within the next few years, it will become the normal for there to be a constant war in the West. People will reach maturity and adulthood under the understanding that there is always a war. And at that point, war will not be something that is unusual or surprising or horrifying. War will become the new normal.
Hey, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there for more AM Joy and the rest of MSNBC. And click on any of the videos right here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. And you can get more videos from MSNBC for free every day with our newsletter. Just visit